Rust iterators look simple until your value suddenly moves. Your loop stops compiling or collect, gives you an error that makes no sense. In this video, we will break down 12 common iterator mistakes with broken code, clear explanations, and fixes you can use immediately. We will start with a common iterator surprise. Rust lets you build a transformation without actually running it. The first example shows how to make that work visible. Imagine these are prices we want to format before showing a checkout summary. We call map to double every number, then run the script and inspect the original vector. The output is unchanged because this map pipeline was never consumed. Let us break down why this happens. Map returns a new iterator that knows how to double values later, but it does not modify numbers, and it does not loop by itself. Now we fix the chain by collecting its produced values into a new vector. Collect is the consumer that makes map run. When we run this version, we get the doubled values we expected. For the best practice, always finish a lazy iterator chain with a consumer when you need a result. Use collect for a collection for each for side effects, and consumers like sum, count, any, or find when they match the job. Next, we will connect iterators to ownership. The method you choose decides whether Rust borrows your collection or moves it away. Suppose we upload every file name and then want to log the original list for debugging. We use iter to print each name, then run the code. Rust stops us because iter moved the vector before the final println. Let us unpack the compiler message. For a vec, iter produces own string values, so the vector gives up ownership of its contents and cannot be borrowed afterward. Now we fix the intent by switching to iter. This borrows each file name instead of moving it, so the vector stays available. Running the corrected version prints every upload and then the original list. For the best practice, choose the iterator method based on ownership. Use iter when you only need to read. Iter mute when you need to edit in place, and iter only when handing ownership away is exactly what you want. Imagine we are searching numeric order IDs for one failed order. We iterate over the IDs and compare the filter parameter directly with 3, then run the code. The compiler reports a comparison error because the closure is receiving reference layers, not a plain integer. Let us break down the types. Values iter produces references to integers, and filter gives its closure a reference to that item, so the parameter needs extra unpacking before we compare the number. Now we fix the predicate with the pattern $n. That pattern unwraps both reference layers and gives us an I32 to compare. After we run it, the matching order ID is returned. For the best practice, inspect what your iterator yields before writing the closure. Use a destructuring pattern like $value when it reads clearly, or use explicit dereferencing when that makes the ownership story easier to follow. Collecting is where iterator output becomes a real collection. Rust checks that the collection type matches exactly what your pipeline produces. Suppose we need uppercase product names for a report. The map call creates a string for each name, but we tell collect to build a vector of string slices. When we run it, Rust points out that string items cannot fill vec of $str. Let us look at the data flowing through this chain. To uppercase allocates and returns a string, while $str is only a borrowed view into existing text. Collect needs its destination type to accept exactly the values coming from the iterator. Now we fix the target type to vec of string. It matches the values produced by to uppercase, so collect can build the list. We run the corrected code and get the uppercase names. For the best practice, make the collection type explicit whenever the iterator output is not obvious. This is especially helpful after map, filter map, and parse, where the produced type often changes. Our final mistake is about mutation. Reading and editing look similar in a loop, but Rust requires a different iterator when values must change. Imagine applying a $10 discount to every cart price. We loop with iter and try to subtract from each price, then run the code. Rust rejects it because iter only gives us immutable references. Let us break down the rule behind this error. Iter gives read-only references even when the vector itself was declared mutable. Rust needs a mutable reference for every element we plan to change. Now we replace iter with iter mute. Each closure argument is now a mutable reference, so subtracting 10 is allowed. When we run the fixed version, every cart price is discounted in place. For the best practice, start with iter when you only need to read values. Switch deliberately to iter mute when an in-place update is part of the requirement, because the iterator method makes that intent clear. Next, let us look at a common filtering mistake. The iterator looks correct, but the original collection does not change. Imagine we are selecting active users for a notification batch. We add filter and expect Ben to disappear from users, so let us write that pipeline and run it. The output still prints every user, even though the iterator finds 2 matches. Let us break down why that happened. Filter is lazy and returns an iterator over matching items, while users remains the same VEC. Counting consumes the iterator, but it never changes the source collection. Now let us fix it by collecting the matching names into a new vec. We keep the original data intact, then run the fixed code and get only the users who should receive a notification. Now we are showing the best practice because it makes the new data flow explicit. Use filter followed by collect when you need a separate collection for later work, and use the original vec when you still need all records. Indexes become tricky when an iterator removes data. The order of enumerate and filter decides which positions you report. Suppose we need diagnostics for invalid CSV records. This pipeline filters invalid rows first, then adds indexes, so let us run it. The first invalid record is reported as row 0, even though it came from source row 2. Let us break down why these indexes are wrong. Enumerate only sees the iterator directly before it, and filter has already removed the valid rows. That makes these indexes useful for the filtered list, but useless for source file diagnostics. Now let us fix the order. We enumerate the complete input first, then filter the indexed pairs. And when we run it, the original row numbers are preserved. Now we are showing the best order because diagnostics need positions from the original input. Put enumerate before filters, skips, or other operations that discard elements whenever you need to report where a value originally came from. Combining iterators can look safe while it quietly loses data. Zip is especially important to understand when inputs arrive from separate systems. We have 3 product IDs but only 2 imported quantities. Let us zip them and run the code. The result looks normal at first, but SKU 300 disappears with no warning. Let us break down what zip guarantees. It can create a pair only when both iterators provide a value, so it stops at the shortest input. Rust does not know whether that missing value is harmless or a serious import problem. Now let us protect the import with a length check before zipping. We run the fixed version, and it stops with a clear message instead of silently losing a product. Now we are showing the safer approach because paired imports must account for every value. Check the lengths before zip when the collections are meant to align exactly. Otherwise, use a model where missing quantities are represented explicitly. Search methods should match the question you're asking. Looking for one result and collecting every result are different jobs. Imagine that we are reporting failed API responses from one monitoring batch. This code uses find, so let us run it. It reports 500, but the later 503 and 502 failures are never included. Let us break down why the other failures vanished. Find returns an option for the first item that matches its condition, then it stops the search immediately. That is efficient when one result is enough, but it is wrong for a complete report. Now let us fix the report with filter and collect. Filter keeps every server error, collect puts them into a VEC, and running the code shows the complete failure set. Now we are showing the best choice for each search goal. Use find when the first matching item answers the question, and use filter with collect whenever a dashboard alert or report needs the full result set. Finally, let us handle data that may not parse correctly. Iterator pipelines are powerful, but unwrap can turn one bad value into a stopped program. We are summing values from a user-provided CSV line, and one field says, oops, this pipeline calls parse and unwrap for every value, so let us run it. The invalid field causes a panic before a sum can be printed. Let us break down the failure. Parse returns, result because conversion can fail, and unwrap assumes that the result is always okay. That assumption is unsafe for external input, where a malformed value is expected sooner or later. Now let us recover by using filter map with OK. Valid numbers pass through, invalid values are intentionally skipped, and when we run the fixed pipeline, the sum is 40. Now we are showing the decision you should make before writing the pipeline. Use filter map when skipping bad records is acceptable, such as a tolerant import. Use collect into result when every value must be valid, and the caller needs a normal error instead of a panic. Next, let's look at how the shape of nested data changes what flatten produces. When user tags arrive in groups, you want one flat list of complete labels, not a stream of letters. Here, each label is stored as a vector of characters, and two flattened calls quietly remove both the group and label boundaries. Now we run it and inspect the output. Let's break down why this happened. The first flatten turns grouped character vectors into character vectors, and the second one expands those vectors into chars. Flatten follows the real nested type. It has no idea that those characters were meant to be one tag. Now let's fix the data model. Store each tag as a string, keep only the outer grouping layer, and flatten that layer once. We run the corrected version, and the terminal now shows complete tag names. Now let's show the best practice. Check the iterator item type before adding flatten. This is the safest approach whenever nested collections carry meaningful boundaries, such as tag names, paths, or records. Use one flatten only when removing exactly one layer is what you intend. Now let's see why a borrowed iterator and a changing vec cannot safely overlap. A job queue may need to add retry jobs while it scans existing work. This iterator still borrows jobs because we use it again after the push. So adding an item can conflict with that active borrow. Let's run this version and let the borrow checker show the problem. Let's break down the compiler message. The iterator contains references into the vec, while push needs exclusive mutable access and may reallocate its storage. Rust blocks that combination because old references could otherwise point to moved data. Now let's fix the queue update. We scan jobs through immutable references, collect any retry jobs in a separate vector, and extend the queue only after the loop ends. Running this version keeps the original jobs and appends the retry safely. Now let's show the best practice. Stage structural changes separately and apply them after borrowed iteration is complete. Use this pattern for queues, caches, and any vec where scanning can produce additions or removals. It keeps ownership clear and makes the update order easy to reason about. You now know the iterator mistakes that trip up many new Rust developers. If this helped, like the video, subscribe to Dev Level Up, and tell me in the comments which Rust bug you want to solve next.